What happens when Hollywood's biggest action star sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts, and the conversation takes a turn nobody saw coming? Today, we're diving into the explosive confrontation between Tom Cruise and Joy Behar that had viewers reaching for their remotes, producers scrambling behind the scenes, and security wondering if they should step in. This is the story of how a routine promotional interview turned into television chaos that nobody could have predicted. Make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments because this one is going to blow your mind. Tom Cruise walked onto the View set with his trademark million-dollar smile, the kind that had charmed audiences for decades. The studio audience erupted in applause as he settled into the guest chair, his posture relaxed yet alert. Joy Behar, sitting at the far end of the panel, watched him with a calculating expression that seemed different from her usual playful demeanor. "Tom, welcome back to the View," Whoopi said warmly, her voice cutting through the applause. "Always a pleasure to have you here." "Thanks for having me, Whoopi. Great to be back," Tom replied, his voice carrying that familiar intensity that made even simple greetings sound like movie dialogue. Sunny Hostin leaned forward slightly. "So Tom, you're here to talk about your new film, but I have to ask, with everything happening in Hollywood right now, how do you navigate the changing landscape of the industry?" Tom's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. "Well, Sunny, I think the industry has always been evolving. What matters is staying true to your craft and giving audiences the best entertainment possible. That's what I've always focused on. That's what drives me every single day." Sarah N. nodded enthusiastically. "And you certainly deliver on that front. The stunts alone in your latest movie are absolutely insane. How do you mentally prepare for something like hanging off a helicopter?" "You know, Sarah, it's about commitment. When you're telling a story, when you're creating something for people to experience, you have to be willing to go all the way. Half measures don't create the magic that audiences deserve. I spend months preparing, training, understanding every aspect of what I'm about to do." The conversation was flowing smoothly, exactly as everyone expected. Tom was in his element, passionate and articulate, sharing stories about his preparation and dedication. The audience was eating it up, hanging on every word. But Joy Behar had remained notably quiet, her fingers drumming silently on the table, her expression growing more focused with each passing minute. "That's fascinating, Tom," Joy finally interjected, her voice cutting through the comfortable rhythm that had been established. "But I'm curious about something else. You talk about commitment and going all the way for your craft. How does that philosophy extend to other areas of your life, specifically, your personal beliefs and how they influence your professional choices?" The temperature in the studio seemed to drop a few degrees. Tom's smile remained, but it became more measured, more controlled. "Joy, I think my work speaks for itself. I'm here to talk about entertaining people, about creating experiences that audiences love." "Oh, but Tom," Joy continued, leaning forward with the predatory focus of a journalist who smelled a story, "surely you understand that in today's world, audiences care about more than just entertainment. They want to know who they're supporting with their ticket purchases. They want to understand the values behind the star." Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Joy, maybe we should focus on the movie," but Joy wasn't backing down. "No, Whoopi, I think this is important. Tom, you've been very vocal about certain beliefs throughout your career. Some might say those beliefs have influenced not just your personal life, but your professional relationships, your choice of projects, even your approach to publicity. Don't you think your fans deserve transparency about how your convictions shape the entertainment they're consuming?" Tom's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Joy, I respect that you have questions, but I'm here as an actor promoting a film. My personal beliefs are exactly that, personal. What I bring to the screen is my commitment to excellence, my dedication to giving audiences the best possible experience." "But Tom," Joy pressed on, her voice gaining momentum, "when those personal beliefs involve organizations that have been criticized for their practices, when there are questions about transparency and accountability, don't you think that becomes a public interest issue? Don't you think your platform comes with responsibility?" The other hosts exchanged glances. This was clearly not going according to the planned interview format. Tom's hands, which had been gesturing Tom's voice dropped to a level that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. "Joy, let me explain something to you about accountability. Accountability means showing up every day and giving everything you have to your work. Accountability means making sure that when someone spends their hard-earned money on a ticket, they get something that was worth every penny. Accountability means treating people with respect, even when you disagree with them." Joy crossed her arms, her stance defiant. "Oh please Tom, don't lecture me about respect when you're dodging every legitimate question I'm asking you. You want to talk about people's hard-earned money? What about the people who give their hard-earned money to organizations that your influence helps promote? Don't they deserve to know what they're really supporting?" "What they're supporting," Tom said, his voice gaining the kind of intensity that had made him famous for playing impossible characters, "is their own spiritual growth, their own path to understanding, their own journey toward becoming better people. What they're supporting is something that has helped millions of people around the world find meaning, find purpose, find ways to help others. Helped millions of people. Joy's voice carried a note of incredulity that seemed to slice through the air. Tom, there are former members who tell very different stories. There are families who have been torn apart. There are people who have spoken out about abuse, about manipulation, about being cut off from loved ones who dared to question or leave. How do you reconcile your version of helping people with those testimonies? Tom's face flushed, his legendary control finally showing real cracks. Joy, you're repeating lies and distortions from people who have access to grind, people who are bitter about their own failures, people who can't take responsibility for their own choices. You're giving platform to propaganda that is designed to tear down something beautiful and meaningful. Propaganda. Joy's voice shot up an octave. Tom, I'm talking about documented testimonies, court records, investigative journalism from respected sources. These aren't bitter failures, these are human beings who have suffered real harm. And you're sitting here calling their pain propaganda. The other hosts looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. Sonny tried to jump in. Maybe we should. No, Sonny, Tom interrupted, his voice now carrying the full force of his personality. I want to address this directly. Joy, what you're doing right now is exactly the kind of bigotry and prejudice that destroys lives. You're taking isolated incidents, distorted stories, and using them to attack an entire community of people who are trying to make the world a better place. Joy's eyes blazed. Bigotry. Did you just call me a bigot for asking questions about documented abuse allegations? Tom, I've spent my career fighting actual bigotry, fighting for people who don't have powerful platforms to defend themselves. Don't you dare try to flip this around and make yourself the victim here. I'm not making myself a victim, Tom fired back, his voice rising to match hers. I'm defending millions of good people who are being attacked by people like you who spread lies and hatred because it gets you ratings. You want to talk about using platforms responsibly. Look in the mirror, Joy, using platforms responsibly. Joy's voice was incredulous. Tom, I'm using my platform to ask questions that journalists should be asking. I'm using it to give voice to people who have been silenced. If that makes you uncomfortable, if that threatens your carefully crafted public image, then maybe that says more about you than it does about me. Tom took a step closer to the panel, his body language shifting into something that reminded everyone present that he was someone who had spent decades playing characters, who didn't back down from fights. Joy, my image isn't carefully crafted, it's earned. Every single day, for 40 years. I have worked harder than almost anyone in this industry to give people something valuable. I don't need to manufacture controversy to stay relevant. I don't need to tear other people down to build myself up. Nobody's tearing you down, Tom, Joy shot back, standing her ground despite the intensity radiating from him. I'm asking you to take responsibility for the influence you wield. When you promote organizations that have been credibly accused of serious wrongdoing, when you use your celebrity to give them legitimacy, that has real-world consequences for real people. Real-world consequences. Tom's voice cracked with emotion. Joy, do you want to know about real-world consequences? The real-world consequence of what you're doing right now is contributing to a culture of hatred and intolerance. The real-world consequence is making it harder for people to find spiritual fulfillment, to find community, to find ways to improve their lives. Oh, spare me the martyrdom act, Joy snapped, her voice cutting through his emotional appeal like a blade. Tom, people can find spiritual fulfillment in thousands of ways that don't involve organizations with histories of documented abuse. You're not defending spirituality, you're defending an institution. And when institutions hurt people, they should be held accountable, regardless of how much money they... Tom's voice dropped to a level that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. Joy, let me explain something to you about accountability. Accountability means showing up every day and giving everything you have to your work. Accountability means making sure that when someone spends their hard-earned money on a ticket, they get something that was worth every penny. Joy crossed her arms, her stance defiant. Don't lecture me about respect when you're dodging every legitimate question. I'm asking you, what about the people who give their hard-earned money to organizations that your influence helps promote? Don't they deserve to know what they're really supporting? What they're supporting, Tom said, his voice gaining intensity, is their own spiritual growth, their own path to understanding. What they're supporting is something that has helped millions of people around the world find meaning and purpose. Helped millions of people. Joy's voice carried incredulity. Tom, there are former members who tell very different stories. There are families who have been torn apart. There are people who have spoken out about abuse, about manipulation. How do you reconcile your version with those testimonies? Tom's face flushed, his legendary control showing real cracks. Joy, you're repeating lies and distortions from people who have access to grind. People who are bitter about their own failures. You're giving platform to propaganda designed to tear down something beautiful and meaningful. Propaganda. Joy's voice shot up. Tom, I'm talking about documented testimonies, court records, investigative journalism from respected sources. These aren't bitter failures, these are human beings who have suffered real harm, and you're calling their pain propaganda. The substance of their concerns, Tom said, his voice carrying dangerous, quiet intensity, is hatred disguised as journalism. The substance is bigotry wrapped up in the language of accountability. And your approach right now is character assassination disguised as responsible broadcasting. Joy stepped closer, her own intensity matching his. Tom, I have devoted my entire career to fighting actual bigotry and hatred. What I'm doing is asking a powerful public figure to address legitimate concerns about his associations. If you can't tell the difference, then you're even more lost than I thought. Lost. Tom's voice exploded with intensity that made audience members jump. Joy, I know exactly where I am and what I stand for. I stand for excellence, for helping people become the best versions of themselves. I stand for organizations that save lives and heal families. What do you stand for besides tearing down people who are trying to make a difference? Joy's face went white except for bright spots of red on her cheeks. What do I contribute? I contribute honest journalism. I contribute accountability for the powerful. I contribute a voice for people who don't have platforms to speak for themselves. Right now, I'm contributing the kind of questioning that every powerful public figure should face. Controversial to who? Joy. Tom demanded, his voice filling the studio. Controversial to people who profit from attacking it. Controversial to people who build careers on manufactured outrage. Controversial to people who can't stand that there might be something that actually works, that actually helps people. The tension had become so thick it felt like the air might crack. Tom and Joy were facing each other like opposing forces that had finally collided after years of circling. Something that actually works. Joy's voice carried disbelief. Tom, if it actually worked, if it was helping people the way you claim, then why are you so afraid of questions? Why are you so threatened by criticism? Why can't you address the concerns instead of attacking everyone who raises them? If there were multiple credible sources, if there were court proceedings, if there were investigative reports from respected journalists, then yes, those allegations should be taken seriously, and I should be held accountable for addressing them. That's how accountability works. Tom, that's what separates responsible public figures from those who hide behind their celebrity status. Tom's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or frustration or both. Hide behind celebrity status. Joy, I use my celebrity status to help people. I use my platform to promote positive change, to encourage people to take control of their lives, to show them that they can overcome any obstacle if they're willing to work for it. You use your platform to promote an organization that allegedly breaks up families. Joy fired back immediately. You use your influence to legitimize practices that former members describe as abusive. And when someone tries to hold you accountable for that influence, you attack them personally instead of addressing the substance of their concerns. The substance of their concerns, Tom said, his voice now carrying a dangerous, quiet intensity, is hatred disguised as journalism. The substance of their concerns is bigotry wrapped up in the language of accountability. And the substance of your approach right now is character assassination, disguised as responsible broadcasting. Joy stepped closer, her own intensity matching his. Tom, I have devoted my entire career to fighting actual bigotry, actual hatred, actual character assassination. What I'm doing right now is asking a powerful public figure to address legitimate concerns about his associations. If you can't tell the difference between those two things, Tom's voice, when it finally came, was steady but carried an undercurrent of steel that everyone in the studio could feel. Joy, I'm going to say this one time, and I'm going to say it clearly. The organization you're attacking has saved my life. It has given me tools to be a better person, a better father, a better professional. It has helped me overcome challenges that would have destroyed other people. And I will not sit here and let you trash something that has brought so much good into the world. Joy's eyes narrowed, sensing that this was the moment she had been building toward. Tom, I'm not asking you to denounce your beliefs. I'm asking you to acknowledge that other people have had different experiences. I'm asking you to show some compassion for people who say they were harmed. Is that really too much to ask? What's too much to ask? Tom said, his voice rising again, is for me to validate lies just to make you comfortable. What's too much? To ask is for me to throw good people under the bus to satisfy your need for controversy. What's too much to ask is for me to betray everything I believe in just so you can have your gotcha moment. Joy spread her hands in a gesture of apparent reasonableness. Tom, nobody is asking you to betray your beliefs. But when you're a public figure with enormous influence, when you actively promote organizations that others claim have harmed them, that comes with responsibility. That comes with the obligation to address legitimate concerns. Legitimate concerns, Tom repeated, shaking his head in disgust. Joy, there's nothing legitimate about ambushing someone who came here in good faith. There's nothing legitimate about using your platform to attack someone's deeply held spiritual beliefs. There's nothing legitimate about what you're doing right now. What I'm doing right now," Joy's voice rose to match his, "is exactly what journalists are supposed to do. Hold powerful people accountable, ask difficult questions, refuse to let celebrity status shield anyone from legitimate scrutiny. And if you can't handle that level of responsibility, then maybe you shouldn't be using your platform to promote controversial organizations in the first place." Tom stared at her for a long moment, his chest rising and falling with controlled breathing. When he spoke, his voice carried a tone that none of the hosts had ever heard before, something that seemed to come from the very core of who he was. "Joy, I have spent 40 years of my life entertaining people, inspiring people, showing them that impossible things are possible. I have risked my life to give audiences experiences they never thought they could have. I have worked with thousands of people, employed thousands more, brought joy to millions of families around the world. And you want to reduce all of that to a controversy about my personal beliefs? I want to address the elephant in the room." Joy shot back without hesitation. "I want to have the conversation that everyone is thinking about but nobody wants to have. I want to hold you accountable for using your enormous influence to promote an organization that others claim has caused them serious harm." Tom's voice, when it came, was quiet but carried more power than any shout. "You know what, Joy? I came here with respect. I came here ready to share something I'm passionate about with people who I thought would appreciate the work that went into it. But you're not interested in that conversation. You're interested in ambush journalism and cheap controversy." "Cheap controversy." Joy's voice cracked with indignation. "Tom, there's nothing cheap about asking powerful people to address legitimate concerns about their associations. There's nothing cheap about giving voice to people who claim they've been harmed. And there's nothing cheap about refusing to let celebrity status shield anyone from accountability." Tom looked around the studio, taking in the faces of the other hosts, the crew members frozen at their positions, the audience sitting in stunned silence. His expression shifted from anger to something that looked almost like disappointment, but a disappointment so profound it seemed to carry the weight of decades. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? The real tragedy is that you had an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with someone who has dedicated his life to excellence, to helping others, to making the world a better place through entertainment and through spiritual growth. Instead, you chose to turn it into an attack session based on lies and distorted information from people with agendas." Joy's voice was unwavering. "The real tragedy, Tom, is that someone with your influence, someone with your platform, someone with your power, can't find the courage to address legitimate concerns about organizations he promotes. The real tragedy is watching you attack the messenger instead of addressing the message." Tom stood perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, his famous intensity now focused into something laser-sharp and utterly controlled. When he spoke, his voice carried a finality that made everyone in the studio understand that something irreversible was about to happen. "Joy, I came here as a professional to promote work that I'm proud of. But you've made it clear that you're not interested in having that conversation. You're interested in gotcha journalism and manufactured controversy. So I'm going to do something I've never done in 40 years of promoting movies." He turned toward the camera with the smooth movement of someone who had spent decades knowing exactly where every lens was positioned. "To the people watching at home who came here to learn about great entertainment, I apologize that this interview was hijacked by someone more interested in controversy than in the incredible work that hundreds of talented people put into creating something special for you." Joy's voice cut through his statement. "Tom, you can't just walk away from legitimate questions." Tom turned back to her, his expression now carrying a cold intensity that seemed to freeze the air around him. "Joy, I can walk away from character assassination disguised as journalism. I can walk away from hatred disguised as accountability. And I can walk away from someone who clearly has no interest in having an honest conversation." Honest conversation. Joy's voice rose one final time. "Tom, I've been trying to have an honest conversation this entire time. You're the one who's been dodging questions, attacking the messenger, and refusing to address legitimate concerns about your associations." Tom looked at her for one final moment, his expression mixing disappointment, frustration, and something that might have been pity. "Joy, the only thing you've accomplished here